Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin. There are lots of chairs around tables and against walls. Those of you who are standing would like to make yourself a little more comfortable. You're welcome to do that. Please make your moves to do that as quickly as you can. We're ready to get underway. Ready to start? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are 3.5 minutes late getting underway. Considering some meetings and their time schedules, that's a pretty good start. I want to say, first of all, thank you all for coming out, taking the time and trouble to do that. I know it's an effort, and I sure appreciate seeing as many faces as we have here tonight. And equally important, I want to also thank those who are online or following us on any of a number of social media channels that we are on tonight. I just want to mention that tonight has been organized, as I know many of you know, by the Port Weller Residents Association Board of Directors, all of whom are here tonight, and I'd like to just introduce them to you if they would stand and be acknowledged as I mentioned their name. Brian Nari, Liz Riley, Dennis Van Meer, Les Dare, David Duraco, Linda Crouch, and me. That's us. I just want to say we'd like to have more of you. If anybody's interested in filling a board position, we would sure love to hear from you. Okay, the purpose of tonight totally is to simply present a public information night for residents of Port Weller East and Port Weller West. I must say first, the land on which we sit today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this is a reminder that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. There's always a lot going on in Port Weller East and West. It's a unique neighborhood. I'm not sure how many of you know how unique. It is one that boasts 2 beaches, a marina, an industrial park, designated agricultural lands, proposed subdivision developments, an animal farm, an historic cemetery, ongoing construction projects, an eco park, a waterfront trail, 2 shipbuilding operations, a dry dock, 2 schools, a community center, 2 pickleball courts, soccer fields, a service club, a cruise ship dock, a church, 6 different zoning designations, and 1 Great Lake, and a canal that cuts through the neighborhood. That's a unique neighborhood, and you should all be proud to be a part of it. Tonight, various presenters will be speaking about items that could impact the residents of Port Weller East and West. Some are proposals, others are simply ideas, some you may have heard about, and some you may not have. The goal tonight is to present the information and provide residents with some takeaways you can consider and formulate your own opinions. We'll do our best to present the information in as transparent a fashion as possible. And by the way, when you have formulated those opinions, we all need to share them, and hopefully we'll come to some consensus. We have various members of the city here, including Grantham Ward Councillors Don Dodge and Bill Phillips. St. Catharines CAO David Oakes is on hand to answer questions about city initiatives, and NDP MPP Jenny Stevens is making a special appearance here, having driven in especially from Queen's Park. Thank you for that. There is opportunity to ask questions in-house and online from those at home streaming the meeting via YouTube, the Port Weller Residents Association Facebook page, and Zoom links. I should mention, if you are in a Zoom room, after people speak, there will be an opportunity to ask questions, and if you wish to participate from your Zoom room, raise your hand, and our technical guys will do their best to acknowledge it. Our first speakers then, moving along, we're going to be separate, but we're going to put them together. Don Dodge and Bill Phillips, both long-serving council members in Grantham Ward. Don has been a long-time resident of the area and a passionate advocate for Port Weller. Bill has served also multiple terms as Grantham Ward councillor, and along with Don has been instrumental in securing many of the great additions to the area, from the new pickleball facility and park area in Port Weller East to improvements to Bogart Community Center and the new splash pad. So here they are both with whatever it is they're going to tell us about is going on. Thank you.
That's okay. Wow. Thank you for the great introduction for Bill and myself, and we'd like to talk together because we have many things that we'd like to share with you, and many of you have experienced some of the things that we've been able to accomplish in our terms at our City Council, and we want to welcome you here tonight and thank everyone for coming, and we're always open to share your thoughts and your concerns. Bill and I are always available for any multitude of things. So in saying that, Bill, come on up and we'll share some of our things that we've accomplished and some thoughts that we have together.
Thanks, Don. And again, thanks to the Port Weller Residents Association Executive for organizing this, and thanks for David Oakes and the Executive Administrator, Trish Sorrenti. We made the agreement that Don and I will answer all the easy questions, and all the difficult questions David will answer. So if we say David, you know you've got one of the tough ones. Doug, you hit the nail right on the head when you indicated that Port Weller is a really unique community, and it's one community divided in half by Welland Canal, which also creates problems with us when both bridges are up. We're dealing with that, aren't we, David? We're hoping to have a meeting with the Seaway officials very soon to try and solve that problem that Don and I have been working on for a long time, so that we never get the bridge up at Carlton Street and the bridge up at Port Weller. It's an ongoing battle, but again, we hope to solve that real soon. To give you an idea of what Port Weller means to the city, in 2021, $3.4 million in capital expenditures came out of our city budget to Grantham Ward. Now, not all of it went to Port Weller, obviously, and in this year, $4 million will be coming out of our capital budget towards initiatives for Grantham Ward. So Grantham Ward is, shall we say, well represented during the Budget Standing Committee, because Don and I are both make sure we get on that committee. As far as things that are going to happen this year, upcoming at Port Weller Community Center, we're really excited about the fact we're finally going to get that park finished. There's going to be a new playground structure going in there. The tennis court is going to be resurfaced, and beside the tennis court will be a ball hockey / basketball court. There'll be a handball court painted on the wall. And obviously the new splash pad is going to be in full play too. So we're really excited about the fact that the Port Weller Community Center playground is finally going to get finished the way it should. The Grantham Rail Trail, ending at Parnell is going to be completed, so people will be able to walk all the way from Parnell all the way down. That trail is going to be completely reconstructed, so you'll be able to go from there pretty well down to Walmart, I think, if you want to walk all the way down there. So that's exciting. Give credit to Councillor Sorrento and Townsend for also spearheading that, because it runs through their ward too. The Welland Canal path is finally going to be completed. It's going to extend from Lakeshore Road all the way down along the edge of Malcolmson Park, below Lock 1, so that when the ships come around the bend, you're going to be able to sit on a bench or on a rock and watch the ships come through. And it's also going to be connected with Malcolmson Park, so you'll be able to go from Cumberland all the way down a path to hook up. So we're trying to make complete trails available there. So that's also exciting. What else? Oh, sidewalks on Arthur Street hopefully are going to be done this spring, but that's going to depend on Bell Telephone, because they have to do relocations before we can start the sidewalk construction. Talking today with our director of TES, he's hoping that we can get that done late spring, but again, depending on Bell. I think, Don, what else am I forgetting? Oh, one other thing, I promised Doug Walls, who's the chair of the Friends of Malcolmson Park, they're having their plant sale Mother's Day, so you're all expected to buy plants. And Della, do we have a plant sale date for the Friends of Walker's Creek yet? First Saturday in June at Della's house. And so you get some really good plants there too, so don't forget to attend those. Done?
Okay. And he's not kidding when he said at Della's house. It's actually at Della's house. So a couple other things with the beach. We're hoping, I don't know whether Bill said this already, but that the washrooms will be completed for this summer season, and it's a local contractor that happens to be doing that. Also, in the engineering vein, at Port Weller Community Center, the parking lot's going to be repaved over there to make it a little nicer for all the exciting traffic we're going to have at those new venues. And then we had a long-standing lease on Port Weller East, and I'm sure a lot of people will remember this area. And so last council, we did pass something that when they're looking at access to the waterfront, that there would be something happening on that side in Port Weller East while we're looking along the water's edge. And it's quite exciting, and engineering's working on that as we speak of it. Then some things that we're working with the region, and our staff is working closely with the regional staff, is we've asked for some ped heads to be installed on Lakeshore Road, crossing Walker's Creek, and we've also requested that they put into their capital budget some signals either at Seaway Hollage Road or at Reed Road, or both, whatever budget would allow for, and what they feel is the best way to move forward with that. And Bill, do you want to tell some other things?
I'm sure if you received your water bill, I did this last week, you had something in regards to short-term rentals. The Airbnb situation has been a real concern because of the beaches in Grantham Ward. The program to legislate or control the way that Airbnbs are run is going to be in full force in Grantham Ward and in Port Toulouse. We are the first two wards in the city to have this implemented. If there's a problem, there's a number on the back of the sheet that you'll all get in your water bill. Keep it with you in case there's a problem, because you'll be able to report that right away. And there is going to be a fee to run an Airbnb. If there's problems with Airbnbs, there's going to be additional staff that are going to investigate that. It's changed now so that it used to be if there was a fine levied on an Airbnb for whatever problem, that money used to go to the province, and it was a real fight as far as getting anything out of it. Now, any fines that are levied are going to be coming to the city, so we're going to have bylaw enforcement staff. We've hired extra bylaw enforcement staff to look after that, so hopefully that is going to assist the problems that we've had, because it has been significant, especially in Port Weller. Anything else?
How about, this is a really good news story. I'm sure that a lot of you have visited this wonderful site in Port Weller.
Oh, yeah.
Happy Rolf's. We had quite a substantial investment in there this past year, and unfortunately with COVID and whatnot, it was limited on what we could do for the grand opening of the new equipment that went in there. So our staff is assured that this summer, COVID-related, if everything being well and moving forward, that we will have a grand opening there so we can celebrate that wonderful space that we have in the heart of our little area down here.
Okay.
Okay,
Doug?
we're done.
I think that's our time allotment.
Thank
Do
you.
have questions?
Oh,
Yes, there is a few minutes allotted for some questions. If you have any, please step to that microphone. And you are, stay with that one. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hear me okay? Is this on?
problem.
Okay, anyway. So I live in Port Weller East. Actually, the table here is at the Trillium Gardens. I'm wondering if you can tell us what's happening with Northrop Road, or Northrop Crescent, the access where the new development's going in, and whether or not that will be maintained open, or is it going to be permanently closed?
Okay.
Sorry?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt if you want to.
No, that's okay. I think most of us are unclear as to what the status is, and most of us are obviously not happy about it being closed, because it's basically shuts off access to Reed Road.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get some clarity from you as to what's happening there.
Okay, so that was one of the hard questions that Bill referred to. So Dave, if you want to come up and address that.
Thank you. Appreciate the handoff.
You're welcome anytime.
Yes. So the road will be closed. That access point eventually will be closed. Part of the subdivision agreements, when all of the separate subdivisions were put forward, that was always established as a temporary road. So the developer right now of the one section where there's a lot, will be putting a house on that parcel. So that access point will be closed at some point in the future. Right now, it's being maintained open by the groups to allow for construction vehicles to use, but ultimately it will be closed.
So there isn't any other access point, so we're going to basically lose that access.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just wondering from your perspective if that is that irrevocable, or what's happening at this point? I mean, I think it's very problematic in terms of, now you're going to force that traffic onto Seaway haulage predominantly.
So what I can say is it's come up to council a few times, and most recently it was the decision based on all of the subdivision agreements. It was determined that it will be closed.
Okay. So to your point earlier, you mentioned about possibility of signals at either Reed Road or Seaway haulage.
That's correct.
So I'm not clear on what that means. Is that definite, or are you saying it may happen, or it's...
So it's definitely a request that we've made to the region to have one or both of those locations to be signalized. And we haven't actually heard back from regional staff. I know that they're working with our staff, and there will be a traffic study to count the traffic and see what's happening there. But we're strongly going to be urging that they become signalized. And both Bill and I are working on that, and it's not something that we're going to let go by the wayside. We're going to keep pushing till we get that.
So is it possible that the access through Northrop will be closed before signals are in place, or will the road be maintained open until proper signaling is in place?
You know what? I would only be guessing, but I would say that Northrop would probably close before the signals go in at those either one of those locations. But that's just a guess on my part.
Okay, personally, I think that's somewhat problematic. There have been a number of accidents and over on Reed Road, and I'm not sure about what's happened at Seaway Haulage, but
Yeah,
But
no,
I'm- sorry.
no, we are aware of that, and that's one of the reasons why we have urged that we get a signalized there, but it takes time, so I'm not
Okay.
sure what either one of them would be when we're going to close, when they're going to close Northrop, or when the signals will go in. We did ask for them 2 years ago, so they are under consideration, but I just don't know where they are in the process.
Okay, so how do we find that out, or what can we do in terms of accelerating that process to get it done sooner rather than later?
You want me to take it?
Sure.
What we have done so far, we've talked to our staff at Transportation. The manager's name is Brian Appleby, great young guy. And he's taken it to the region. I've also talked with Councillor Brian Height, and he's taken it, and I think Donna has also, has taken it to their transportation department at the region. And we're waiting, as Don said, we're waiting for a result from them. I suggest you contact, because it is a regional road, we're just strongly advocating for it. I suggest you talk with one of your regional councillors from St. Catharines to advocate to get that done, because we definitely agree it's something that's needed there, and we want to get one at Walker's Creek to go across where the new development's supposed to go in there. We've also requested some traffic changes for that new development that's going in there too.
Okay.
But I'd suggest you contact your regional councillors. But
Okay, good, thank you.
okay, thank you for the question.
Thank you,
Any others?
Brian.
Can I ask a question quickly? I'm just curious, is there... Can you go to the microphone, please? Sorry? Can you go to the microphone, please? Has there been an approval for the 5-story apartment building in Port Weller East, or any sort of forward motion with that?
I talked to our director of planning just last week, and there has not been a proposal come forth from them yet. We had a public meeting, as you may be aware. Don and I walked the site with some concerned residents, but there hasn't been a plan that's been set forth yet. But it's zoned R3. The rest of it around there is zoned R1, but because it wasn't originally a residential area, it was owned by the Catholic Diocese, it was zoned R3. So what he wants to put in there fits within the plan. We're just trying to modify it so that it's better than what, it suits our needs.
Yeah.
Suits your needs, let's put it that way.
Yes, because Broadway Garden, that was initially slated for a 5-story development as well, and I know you guys live in the townhomes there. Like,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to have that kind of
Yes,
same transition
that's
in
true,
there.
and there's still, in the new Broadway, or the Bromley subdivision, there's still a big parcel of land that a 5-story is supposed to, and Don and I both voted against that a long time ago, but that's supposed to, still can go in there, possibly.
Okay, folks. We have a fairly lengthy schedule, so I don't want to be rude, but we are going to try to tighten up a little bit. Thank you, Don and Bill. The next speaker that I'd like to introduce to you is our MPP for St. Catharines, Jenny Stevens. Just thank you all. It's great she could be here. Jenny, among many other accomplishments for Port Weller, she was instrumental. She was a strong advocate, helping us get rid of the clinker dust piles. Some of you will remember that, and lobbying the St. Lawrence Seaway to deal with our canal bridge issues. So thank you, Jenny, for adjusting your schedule to be here tonight. It's all yours.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. I've warned a few people at the front tables that when you ask a politician to speak, sometimes it gets long and winded. So, and that's because we don't like to answer questions, right? So good evening, dignitaries, senior staff from the City of St. Catharines, residents, and Port Weller Residents Association. It's a pleasure to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I am the member of Provincial Parliament for the City of St. Catharines, and at this time I would like to thank all of you and the Port Weller Resident Association for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I think it is pretty clear that the past few years, 2021 especially, have been hard for many in our communities and throughout the City of St. Catharines. Concerns over access to vaccines and rapid tests and continued stories of burnt-out frontline workers and burnt-out workers right across the board. Healthcare remains the #1 issue, but housing is right behind that. Anyone who knows me will know that I am a hands-on person. When I dig my heels in, I dig them in hard. If someone else is not going to do the job, then I roll up my sleeves and I'll get it done. When I was first elected as MPP of St. Catharines, this is when I met Dave Duraco, and I met the Port Weller Association group. Port Weller residents had grave concerns of a chemical dusting that was leaking into the air from the dry dock area. At that time, the issue had been kicked from one level of government to another level of government. And I am proud to say that when I dug my high heels in, I kept on this issue and until it was contained and finally removed from your residents and your area. You know, policies are important. However, so is making sure that you have the backs within your communities. So when a senior is getting harassed with evictions for no fault of their own, dealing with this kind of issue has been one of my top priorities as well. Just like Port Weller's clinker dust issue from a few years ago. The last couple of weeks of 2021 and the first couple of weeks of 2022 was about trying to get booster shots. Over the holidays, and after hearing from several residents, I spent time signing people up to get their shots because a lot of our seniors did not and could not navigate or understand the portal. They saw the bouncing man, may I say, over and over and over again. Hell, I didn't even know how to navigate that thing at first. So I spent time between Christmas and New Year setting up additional booster clinics to make sure St. Catharines received their fair shot of boosters. You know, if you wanted one, you should have been able to get one. Bottom line. Despite all the challenges, there have been a lot of good stories as well over the past 2 years. I was glad to see funding for Quick Plug on Niagara St. The engineering and manufacturing, now I have to be careful because you can't say this 3 times fast. Manufacture peat plug products for professional growers. Didn't do too bad. Including traditional greenhouses, which I think is a really, really good green investment. Working closely with the other side, St. Catharines received investments in our local nonprofits like Jillian's Place and the Gymnastics Studio, and youth services that have allowed them to modernize. However, I will say this, we need a greater emphasis on working with all levels of government to tackle poverty and affordable housing issues for all of our communities within our great city of St. Catharines. I think something that has come out of Queen's Park recently may end up affecting a community like Port Weller will be related to how we respond to the housing crisis. Even though most residents in Port Weller community own their own homes, we have all seen the skyrocketing house prices and the chances of seeing our children owning a home in our neighborhood or in their neighborhood that they grew up in is becoming less and less of a reality. Our grandparents and our parents are finding themselves in a tougher position if they try to downsize and rent. They are invulnerable to massive rent hikes. This is really, really scary for the community of St. Catharines. But no one is immune to the effect of the housing crunch. All families are impacted. All people within St. Catharines are impacted. This month, the province received a housing task force report which talked about removing a community's ability to have a say in what is built in their neighborhood for the sake of building houses faster. Shame. This reality may have an impact right here in your community. The problem is that the report does nothing for the demand side of housing equation. It does nothing for rent, which is now more than most people pay for their mortgage. And as I said, it does nothing to help the first-time homebuyers to buy into this market. The reality is, the more corporations are buying up single-family homes within our city, and this has completely changed the market. I have a different vision on those issues, because I think doing the same thing over the last 15 years and expecting a different result is problematic. I am hopeful the next provincial government, which will be coming out at the end of April, 4 days before our next election, if this bill passes, will add clarity to this muddy situation. It just should have been a lot sooner. With my last couple of minutes, I told you I was going to bore you. No, I'm just teasing. I want to thank each and every one of you in this room tonight, each and every one of you for the support in the past 4 years, and particularly the last 2 years, with staying a positive attitude and doing your part to keep all of us safe. And most of all, we all must take the time to check into all of our neighbors, check in with our families, check in with our friends, but check in on yourself as well. This sure has been a difficult 2 years for all of us. However, I am positive someday in the future, we all will look back on this pandemic, and I'm sure we all will have a special memory to reflect on. I have to take a minute now, and I have to commend your 2 city councillors here. You guys got a pickleball court here in Port Weller. I can't believe it. I've asked for a pickleball court in Meriton when I was a city councillor, and I never got it. Congratulations. And you know, it's God's country. Don and I have had many, many arguments on what's God's country. But I want to thank you all this evening, Port Weller Residents Association, the fine folks that are from this community. Port Weller is one of the most desirable communities in St. Catharines. And on behalf of Your Majesty's official opposition, I would like to thank you, and I appreciate having the moment to speak to you this evening. Thank you. Stay here for questions? Yeah.
We have a few moments for questions, if there are any, of Jenny. Anyone like to question her?
See, it worked. I talked too long, and you have no questions.
Boy, you're getting off easy tonight.
I am getting off easy. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Jenny, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, on January the 4th, 2022, the City of St. Catharines released its 2021 Beach Strategy Update, detailing the results of last year's efforts to generate revenue at the beaches and to deal with some of the control issues that were amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic. Wouldn't have been there otherwise. So here to recap that report and discuss its implications, I'm pleased to introduce Trish Sorrenti, Executive Administrator for the City of St. Catharines. Trish, you're here.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me to talk about the 2022 beach strategy now. As many of you know, COVID back in 2020 brought some challenges that we didn't think we were going to face. Those challenges We saw things like unfavorable behaviors. We saw a lot of increase in garbage and waste. And overall, what we wanted to do the most was ensure that our community was kept safe. And we implemented security to ensure that our residents were kept safe, crowds were limited, and then we implemented the 2021 beach strategy. The intention of the strategy was to reduce some of those behaviors that we saw. One of the questions that's always posed is whether security was necessary or not. Security was never something that was part of the 2021 beach strategy, but it was something that we felt we had to do when we saw that the behaviors continued into 2021 from 2020. What we saw was that hidden gem that we all know so well as Sunset Beach became something popular, something that people saw, like the people like you see, something beautiful, wonderful, that everyone was attracted to. One way we wanted to implement the strategy and our objectives was implementing parking with a cap not only on the time, but a $3 per hour. We saw that as a way of showing that we wanted to quickly turn around parking spaces. We wanted to make it a space for everyone to enjoy. What we had was council had asked for staff to implement for residents to have free parking as well. That turned out to be a very popular choice. And what staff saw was up to 15,000 applications for residents to have a free parking pass. And staff quickly turned that around. And while we were able to quickly turn that around and get out 15,000 passes, it was a lot to take on for staff. We had approximately 20 staff checking IDs, checking, validating, and sending out parking permits. This was all a manual process for you to understand that what staff had to take on validating, stuffing envelopes, and getting those passes out to our residents. While we did that, we ensured our residents were still able to park by having security at the front doors and handing out temporary parking passes for 2 weeks while we got our footing right. Recognizing that this is not something staff can take on in 2022, we decided to start an EOI process, which is an expression of interest. And what we look to is we look to the people who specialize in this. Okay, so printing 5,000 passes on a photocopier, hand stuffing them is not ideal. So we turned to the vendors and said, you tell us how we can manage this for 2022. Currently, what staff are doing is going through and reviewing those EOIs and presentations and working with vendors to find a solution that's more suitable, more efficient, and more economical. What that looks like is what we hope is more of a virtual pass that is identified by a license plate instead of having a piece of paper that ultimately ends up in our garbage, in our waterways, and in our environment. While we still go through the process, we're hopeful we'll get through and bring something to council to present. One of the other things that was on our beach strategy report that's been a little bit of contention was the decommissioning of the boat launch. We had a consultant come and take a look at the boat launch. The boat launch is no longer safe and will eventually need to be removed. For 2022, I want to put everyone's mind at ease that we will continue to have the boat launch for the 2022 beach season. However, we do want to start focusing our efforts on what Sunset Beach looks like in the long term and what do we want for that beach in the future. What do we want? We want to support our environmental sustainability pillar, and we want to be leaders in protecting our environment. We want to demonstrate that we're those leaders, and we want to focus on the other infrastructure needs of Sunset Beach. It's a beautiful beach, and it has a lot of potential to be a passive beach where people can go and enjoy with their families, with their friends, and feel safe. We want to focus on shoreline protection and formalize and improve our parking facilities. As you've already heard, our washrooms hopefully will be ready for the summer. And then as part of phase 2 of the Sunset Beach, would be looking at shoreline protection and the parking lot. We will be doing public engagement for the boat launch, and we will be reporting back to council on that. But for now, for 2022, the boat launch will be there. Unless there's any questions.
Anybody have questions for Trish? You're allowed.
You're running the show.
You're allowed.
Clear on your last statement there, you said there will be public opportunity to have input on the future of a free boat launch in St. Catharines?
Okay, like not on a free boat launch, on the boat launch, but it's going to be all encompassing. We want public feedback on everything, what will be the future plans for Sunset Beach as far as the shoreline protection, the parking lot, and will include the boat launch.
Yeah, and I'm sort of on the fence on that. I know I'm not a boater, and I know some people in Port Weller, east and west, would like to see the launch leave. Others want to keep it. From my perspective, it's that we are a city built on a Great Lake, and it's incumbent on the city to make sure that there's free access to the beach somehow. So I would hope that maybe when you are discussing the decommissioning of the launch, that there's an opportunity or a strategy to continue to offer free access for boaters. That's just my opinion. I don't know if there's anyone else who shares it.
Thank you.
Trish, I read into what you said. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you feel you have to. I read into what you said regarding Sunset Beach that you're developing what we call a vision plan for what should happen overall with Sunset Beach. And if that's the case, that's terrific. We all still get a chance to assess, comment, be a part of the development of that plan. That's terrific. That's good news. Next subject, the Hostetter family. Is everybody familiar with that name? I didn't think so. The Hostetter family were some of the original settlers in the Port Weller area. I mean, really original, way back. As water has receded in the Beamer Creek area, several gravestones have been revealed. Very fascinating. So up next to talk about a possible restoration project is Brian Nari, chair of the city's Heritage Committee, lifelong Port Weller resident, and one of our best board members. Brian.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm here to be the comic relief for the proceedings tonight. There's enough drama going on in the world, and you know, with COVID over the last couple of years, that we need something, you know, lighthearted. And I thought that maybe if the community could get together and restore or work on commemorating the Hostetter Cemetery in some way, that would be a nice way to draw people together. Just to give you a little bit of background as well, within the boundaries of the Port Weller Residents Association, there were originally 4 pioneer burial places. There was the Williams Service grave over on the east side, over by Amber Stairs. There was the Jones Hodgkinson Cemetery, which was over here on Bunting Road by across from, I guess, Bahama Bay. It's pretty much been blown out of existence. There's nothing left there unless it's, you know, deeply buried. Then on the west side over here, there was the Darby family burial plot, which has actually been nicely restored over the past few years. The service plot was also restored probably about 40 years ago. So the only burial plot that hasn't had anything done on it is the Hofstetter Cook Cemetery, which is near and dear to my heart because I live right beside it. It's down at the end of Jarrow Road. I thought I had a couple of pictures that we were supposed to put up showing the cemetery before and after shots.
They didn't go through Brian's part.
Oh, they didn't?
No, I sent them.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, the Hofstetters, as we pointed out, is one of the early founding families in Grantham and St. Catharines, and sufficiently important that, gee, somebody wrote a book about them. But even though they were so important and they had this lovely family burial ground with about 15 people buried in it, about 60 years ago, the cemetery was completely vandalized. It was just smashed to pieces. And in my little bag of goodies here, this is the kind of thing that's left in the Hofstetter Cemetery right now. This happens to be a piece of Herman Hofstetter's gravestone. He fought at the Battle of Queenston Heights. He died in 1812. And this just emerged out of the topsoil last summer after a good rain. So there's probably all kinds of stuff like this going to, emerge. So anyway, I've done a little bit of fact-finding. And now, the Hofstetters, like I say, there were about 15 people buried in that cemetery, but there were only 7 marked graves that we know about. The rest were unmarked. And if we want to, I think it would be a nice touch if we could commemorate these people. Like, I'm one of the few people that's still living and breathing that can actually walk through that cemetery and say, so-and-so is buried here, so-and-so is buried there. And I think it would be a nice thing to commemorate them with new tombstones. So if we went with getting flat markers, flat granite markers to put on the ground, they roughly start at $500 a piece. That's including the inscription on it, which I think is actually a pretty good buy. The smallest size that we can get is 10 by 12 inches for a flat marker, and it's 4 inches thick. Then they go upwards in price. The largest monument is 18 inches by 24 inches, and I think 6 inches thick, and that's like $833. So I figure if we could, do some fundraising within the community. If people want to chip in to pay for the cost of getting these tombstones made up, we can have them installed in the cemetery. It probably would cost, just for the tombstones alone, maybe $2,000 to $3,000, which is not a huge chunk of money. And then, if somebody else has also said if we can get, bits of fencing up there to mark the corners of the plot. I think with the city, they probably wouldn't want to have a solid fence all the way around the burial plot, because if they have to get in to do grass cutting or any kind of maintenance, they don't want to be, trying to, figure out how to open up gates and things like that. So if we just had partial bits of fence or even just a couple of corner posts to show where the limits of the plot was. So it would be great if we could, work together as a community on this project, work with city staff to, get this thing rolling. And if we do the fundraising ourselves, and it's not going to cost the city a great deal of money, or perhaps it won't cost anything at all. And basically, that's about all that I have to say about that. I think it would be nice if we could get a subcommittee of the Port Weller Residents Association to work on this project. I don't know if we need a motion to get a subcommittee going, or if we just want to self-anoint ourselves and start doing the work on it. But hopefully if we can, work with each other and city staff, it might be a feel-good project. And it would certainly make good press for the Residents Association, and it would beautify a nice little spot down by the lake. So that's probably about it. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Where is it?
Sorry, can you ask questions in the microphone, please, for the benefit of the recording and everyone watching?
I'd like to know exactly where the location is.
It's right at the end of Jarrow Road. So if you're coming up Arthur Street past the Valley Inn Restaurant, Jarrow is the first street at the top of the hill to the left-hand side, so it's on the west side of Arthur. It's right at the very end of the street. So it's on a little hillside overlooking Beamer Creek. And it's actually, the site is fairly well maintained by the city. I mean, there's not a lot of weeds and underbrush there. It's just that, you know, there's hardly any tombstones left. And I say it would be nice to give these people the honor that they're due as some of our founding citizens.
Thank you, Brian. Very worthwhile project. I've read a little bit about the history of that family, and it really is quite fascinating. It goes back such a long, long way. I didn't see any hands go up offering to volunteer to help Brian, but perhaps there's one over there. Okay, we're on a roll. We got one. Do I see two? Do I see two? Have I got two? Up there's. If any of you do decide you'd like to do that, of course, please be in touch with David DeRocco through the Port Weller Residents Association email address. Okay, moving along. The 45 acres of orchards and greenhouses south of MJ's and Werner's Fruit Farm at 406 Lakeshore Road have been zoned industrial since 1971. Since those lands are within the urban city limit, they cannot be returned to legally conforming agricultural use. A concept plan for that space has been proposed that includes mixed-use commercial and residential, single-family homes, semis, townhouses, apartments, assisted living, senior living, a park, and commercial uses. This spring, City Council will have the option to approve or oppose the proposed development. The city has turned down a previous submission for such land uses in order to keep these lands zoned for general employment, as is now called, or industrial, previously, uses. I'd like to introduce to you Mike Pettigrew to talk about the concept plan and what it can mean if it were to be improved or approved in the future. As Mike is making his way here, I have to emphasize the fact that Mike is representing 406 Lakeshore Road, and he's been invited here by us to speak to his proposed concept plan. He and our city councilors can only answer questions in a limited fashion due to the fact that this matter is still under discussion between them and the city. The purpose of tonight is for information purposes only, and the Port Weller Residents Association will provide us all via our email list the best and most effective way to express our thoughts and opinions, as this is in a very fluid state. May I introduce Mike Pettigrew?
Thanks, everybody. So my name is Mike Pettigrew. I'm a senior planner with the Bigley Area Group, and I'm a planning consultant, and we're based out of Hamilton and Toronto. I'm new on the file because the previous planner who submitted the plans prior to, it's a lengthy sort of, as Doug alluded to, it's gone to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The previous planner was IBI Group. And so we've taken the file on as of basically December of 2021. So I've been working on this for the last 3 months, and we're working on a new concept plan, which is just being brought up here on the screen. And as you heard, there were previous applications that were made in the planning process for what's called an official plan amendment. And the official plan sets out the general land uses for all of the city. And so, as was told, this area is employment lands, which again, employment allows for general industrial uses, manufacturing, warehouse, that sort of thing, with limited offices and sort of retail. What is going to the Ontario Land Tribunal is the city has initiated an official plan amendment of their own to redesignate a large portion of Port Weller East as employment area. And the difference between employment land and employment area is essentially securing for the long term these employment uses. So it gives it a little bit more strength to maintain, and it's much harder to convert. The bar or the threshold for converting those lands from an employment use to something else, be it in this case residential and commercial, is a lot more difficult if that official plan amendment does pass. And so our client has appealed that, and that's the reason why Doug has mentioned that I can't talk about a lot of those details because that's an ongoing case and we're sort of limited in the scope. The plan itself that you see here has changed a little since the previous proposal that was talked about. In part, there are less units overall. The area that is being sought for residential development, if you can see the buildings that are in blue, as part of discussions with the municipality and the changes to the application or the proposal, was to actually maintain a portion of the site, about 1/3 of the site, for employment uses, to sort of act as a buffer. You see the blue lines that have been sort of highlighted around the street network. Everything else around this site, including technically the existing single-family homes that are on Reed Road and the buildings that are on Lakeshore, they're all technically at this point designated employment. So they all have the same zoning and the same official plan designation on them. So that's why they're shown in blue. And of course, the greenhouse is the sort of wedge shape to the top right. And so the proposal here, again, is to maintain some of the area for employment. In this case, the least intensive or the least impactful would be something like not manufacturing, but more like a warehouse or small assembly. And so these smaller format buildings are ones that you typically would see in the prestige business areas along the QEW. So it's sort of an office with a warehouse sort of component that would be at the back. Two-story buildings, they're all roughly 20,000 square feet. Again, this is conceptual. Even the location of the buildings with parking in the front, we've shown a couple of different configurations of how they could be laid out. And so the large green rectangle in the middle is about a 2-hectare, about almost 5-acre park. And the buildings that are directly south, oh yes, thank you for whoever's got the hand there. The buildings that are directly to the south, we have 3 8-story buildings. And those apartment buildings are oriented in this fashion for a particular reason. And I'll get to that in just one second. And then the orange buildings that are to the immediate east, those are proposed as stacked townhouses. So they would have an underground parking garage. So would the apartment. There will be some surface, but mostly underground. Those stacked townhouses are units that have usually they're 3.5 or 4 stories. We don't have a design for those. This is, again, conceptual. They would have a unit that ranges usually somewhere from about 1,000 to about 1,500 square feet. They can be 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. And they are arranged like you would see townhouses, but without a backyard. There are units that are on the opposite side, and then there's units that are on top. So they have access at the street, but there's units on the 2nd and 3rd floor, and then there's a unit on the 1st and sort of sub-level. And then there would be townhouses, 2-story townhouses to the north and to the south and east side in the orange buildings. And then there are 10 single detached homes on minimum size 50-foot lots. Actually, sorry, they're 60-foot lots. And they are quite deep. They're the smallest one, I think, is around 200 feet deep. and then you can see that it flares out. And so the other yellow area that we have there is, it says proposed residential. It's technically proposed because they exist, but as I said, the designation calls it employment, despite the fact that they are residential. So we made the suggestion that should be included as residential. And so overall, in this concept, there's approximately 937 units. Most of those are in the apartments. There's about 600 apartments. And as talked about in the previous application, there was assisted living, there were seniors. Those opportunities would likely be within those buildings. So that's not finalized yet, but that's typically the format that they would be in. And I alluded to the orientation and the arrangement of those buildings, and there's a particular reason. So because of the existing employment from the Heddle Shipyard and Stubbies, there is a setback that is required based on ministry guidelines. And that distance is set on a number of factors, but it's to control impacts from dust and noise. And so these buildings, the west side, the west corridor, is actually what we call a single loaded corridor. And typically in an apartment building, you would have a hallway and you'd have apartments on either side of that hallway. In this case, there would be no units on the west side. And so there would be no impact to any residents that would have apartments, directly facing to the west. Instead, what happens is the buildings sort of act as a noise barrier. And they do a really great job, especially when they're taller at what's proposed here at 8 stories. They would actually act as essentially a noise wall like you would see on the highway, but articulated in a way so it doesn't look like just a complete blank wall. But there's no residential units facing that way, so there's no direct impact. And that was actually what was proposed in the previous application when there was the first application, to my understanding, when there was actually no employment uses being proposed on the site, and the buildings were actually going to be right up to seaway haulage. So we've set them back about 300 feet or more, and then we have this buffer. And that buffer will actually help benefit some of the existing single detached homes that are on the other side of Reed Road, and even the ones, I think there's one house that's right at the south, sort of southeast corner. Yeah, right there, exactly. And so those buildings are arranged that way to act as that additional buffer. This, again, right now, this is conceptual. We do have to come back to the city with a resubmission. So there were reports that were provided with the first 2 submissions done by IBI. And so this is our working concept. This also comes from an open house that was held, I forget the day exactly, but it was in December, mid-December. And that open house was discussing the previous concept, which you heard, the singles, the semis, and the assisted living and so on. And this was a revision based on that and sort of the dialogue that happened at that open house that I was in attendance. And so really this is for informational purposes, but I'd like to get your feedback. This time-wise, I know we can't have a full, normally it'd be 2 hours of just talking about a plan, but I will leave some of my cards with my email address, and any of the members of the Residents Association, happy to share my information. I'm the main point of contact for that, and any questions that are sort of general right now I can answer, and then any other questions that are more specific, please email me. I'm happy to hear those, and we continue to move forward. So, thank you.
Microphone.
How many people would you propose would be actually living in there based on the number of units you've proposed?
So the way the people per unit is different depending on the use. So out of those 600 apartment units, there's an average, usually they say about 1.5. So there would be somewhere around 400, let's say, people, maybe 450 in the apartments. And then 750. There would be 900 people. And then in the stacked townhouses, there are, it depends on the number of bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. But all told, I think if you did an average over that of 2, you're looking at about 1,800 people, let's say, overall.
Okay. So what's the population of Port Weller East?
I don't know if there's someone has a current population?
Less than 1,000. Okay.
There.
So it'll be roughly double the current population there. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. A couple questions for you. Currently, how many fruit trees are on that piece of property, if you had to guess?
I don't know.
Like 500, 300?
I have not. I don't have a count. I don't know.
And how many of those tree canopy would stay with your residential development?
Well, none of them would be.
So you take down all the trees?
In this current configuration, or if it were to be employment lands.
Right.
Employment lands, certainly there would be none as well.
Right, but it's been employment land for years, right? And the trees are still there?
Yes, you are correct. Yeah, it has been employment lands for years, waiting for employment to occur. Yeah.
Okay. One other question is, your client's appeal for the ministry zoning order, is that on all of the official plan in St. Catharines or just this piece of property?
So the appeal was not on the MZO. The MZO is something that the city initiated.
Okay.
That's something that maybe I don't think staff can talk about, but that was something that they initiated to try to ensure that this does become employment land. So their MZO is a request to enshrine the OPA that they had passed. Our application is there's a private OPA where we're suggesting that this be in part converted to residential from employment. And then our appeal is on the city's official plan amendment that they passed. So that OPA was to change various areas throughout the city. It was essentially to create a designation of employment areas. And so our client has appealed the entire OPA because it's a numbers game at the end of the day of where that employment area could occur in the city. And so the appeal is on OPA 26 is the specific OPA, and that's what's going forward to the OLT.
So the appeal is on all of the employment lands designated in St. Catharines, not this specific one?
It technically it's on everything, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. One more.
Yeah, I had a question about how that would impact the traffic with the bridge. That's where my thought goes. And how, wow, just can only imagine the lineups back and forth if it's exploding with the population.
So there was an initial traffic assessment that was provided. There will be updates as we go through. This application is just for the official plan. So there's still going to be a zoning process and there'll still be a draft plan process. And that will determine what would, if we are successful with the official plan to have some of this converted as residential, there will be much more in-depth reports that are provided at that time. But to keep in mind as well, when it comes to the traffic, this area is currently designated as employment, and someone could come in and develop this property, and there would still be an increase of truck traffic that would come from that. So what we're hoping with an application like this to change it to a more sensitive land use, it would also then have a different type of traffic, if you will, where it's less focused on heavy trucks, which I don't know about the rest of the road network. It's not very well maintained or in a state for that kind of truck traffic. So a whole traffic assessment would be completed, and that's also reviewed and vetted by the city.
Yeah, I just think of the traffic as it is now with the bridge, when the bridge is down, and how far it is back on the one side and the other. And if the population has exploded, I just can't imagine how far that would be down.
Yeah, I don't have a specific, because there hasn't been a detailed traffic study, so I apologize for that. But that is something that will be required and will be part of future applications beyond the official plan amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take one more question.
This will be quick. Just one other comment, and don't expect an answer, but one of our big concerns in Port Weller East has always been getting ambulance or fire across, whether we have 2 bridges up or 1 bridge up. it's a problem. So you're going to have 1,800 more. Broadway Gardens has a sprinkler. It's great for them, but it doesn't help those of us. But it's more ambulance than most of us because we're an older population in Port Weller East. So it'd be the same with your group. I think it's something that you'd have to think about.
Certainly, and that actually, as part of any traffic study, the emergency response that comes in, Fire and Emergency Services also comment on those applications. So that would be a future study that would occur. And again, similar to the other traffic concerns, if this was to be developed the way the official OPA 26 is envisioning, it would be also a very intense employment area. So you would have a large population there requiring emergency vehicles to attend as well. So it is something that's a factor regardless. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And like I said, I'll leave a stack of cards and then my information will be shared. So I'll leave those up there.
Sorry, one more.
Okay, one more.
Thank you. Because of the proximity to the lake, what do you have in the plans for mitigation of pollution of the water or flooding, maintaining water flow? You know, you're ripping out the trees. There's potential of flooding over the road as well, and pollution.
In terms of pollution, a sensitive land use like residential will be again, far less potential for pollution of any kind than employment would, number one. And the types of uses that would be permitted in that employment area would be much more intense industrial uses. And so I could not sort of speak exactly. It's not something that was studied or requested by the city. But even removing of the trees, there's a stormwater management plan that will occur. And that stormwater management, anything that changes on the site, you have to maintain the pre-development flows. And so that's part of an overall draft plan study at the end of the day that would determine how the stormwater and the drainage would occur and where those flows end up going. There's quality control and quantity control that happens through that process, but that's at the draft plan stage as well. And either stormwater ponds or certain controls for oil and grit separators, that sort of thing that may occur with the roads. So it is something that does get flagged, again, at a later stage in the development process.
Thank you.
Thank you, friend.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Got a long way to go before anything very much happens. I don't think you have to worry about the trees for a while yet. All right, moving along. The Van der Zam family were born and raised in Port Weller East and have run this second-generation family business, Colonial Flowers, that's been part of both the local Port Weller community and the community at large for the past 60 years. They've turned down many offers from cannabis companies for their greenhouses and lands adjacent to the entire south limits of the Broadway Garden subdivisions. Recently, a request from the Van der Zam family to have their zoning changed from industrial to residential was turned down by City Council. The same night, the 406 Lakeshore concept plan was turned down. Tonight, we have representatives here from the Van der Zam family to share their thoughts on what they feel is the best path forward for local business, local residents, their lands, and the future of the Port Weller Industrial Park as a viable location for future industrial clients. I don't know if you can all speak at once. If you can, you're welcome. Thank you. Van der Zams, folks.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug. Nice to see everyone. Nice to see a nice turnout tonight. My name is Ron Van der Zalm. I am one of the owners of Colonial Florist. I'm here with my brother Jim and my two cousins, Paul and Rob. We are the greenhouse operation for those in Port Weller East that you drive by every day as you go down the Hollage Road. Unlike Mike, I'm not a planner. I'm a farmer at heart. I don't have graphs or anything. But I do just want a few words just about what our thoughts are moving into the next generation and what we would like to see with our land. So as I said, we're a third generation greenhouse operation. Get rid of this thing. My father and his brother started the business over 60 years ago. We were born and raised in Port Weller East. We saw it grow from farmland to what it is now, which is a lot of residential. I'm here tonight just to discuss the rezoning of our 18-plus acres of the greenhouses on Broadway Avenue. In the past, Port Weller was mostly small cottage community and farmland. In the recent 20-plus years, much of the farmland has been developed into subdivisions. In the past few years, the most significant change for us was the sale of Broadway Gardens and the subsequent homes built on that land. This had a huge impact on us as a company because what used to be one neighbor with a similar business and mindset has now become multiple homeowners with all their own concerns about living in such close proximity to our greenhouse operation. Since we can't change the fact that the city of St. Catharines decided to allow the homes to be built right next to our greenhouses without, and this is kind of key, providing a greenscape or a buffer between our lands, it only makes sense now that our property should follow suit and be designated residential so that if in the future we decide to sell, then no other businesses can be built in such a close range to the beautiful and quiet neighborhood being established right next to us. Accessibility is huge for any business, and the reality is that Broadway is inconveniently located next to the Welland Canal and far from any main highway. We can speak from experience about the frustration of having to navigate the canal bridges, especially in transport trucks. When our father started the business many years ago, trucks weren't as big and the streets were far less busy. And the number of street lights just to get to the QE have increased. I realize the need for the lights and the increase in population, but I also recognize how impractical the location makes for future industrial development. Our business has outgrown our property on Broadway Avenue, as we are completely landlocked, and as a result, 5 years ago we bought 72 acres in Niagara Lake. This land is well suited for expansion and had existing greenhouses on it already, and lots of space for growth for our greenhouses. Although the new location is in Niagara Lake, we will still be very dependent on St. Catharines residents to create our workforce. In fact, I think the new location may even be easier for employees to access, as we are very near the highway and there's no more concerns for the bridge. One need not look further than Stewart Road in Niagara Lake and the new Myers build with the state-of-the-art automation to know that this is the direction the greenhouse industry is taking. With the amenities in Port Weller East, such as the lovely parks, the lakefront, the walking trails, the marina, and our access to world-class wineries of Niagara Lake, it just makes sense that this area should be designated residential rather than industrial. The Niagara region should focus on developing the industrial opportunities throughout the region closer to the highways and not sandwiched between residential areas. It is our desire to have the land considered for redesignation from its current status of industrial to residential before the city finalizes the new official land use plan. I might also just quickly take this opportunity. There were some concerns. The city had called last week that they thought we were growing marijuana in the greenhouses. I can assure you there's no marijuana being grown, nothing but nice, healthy flowers. And also you might see the smokestacks there once in a while, puffing out some black smoke. We burn only clean wood. You can only burn and combust your wood as good as the wood that comes in. We have had a lot of wet and frozen wood come in throughout this winter. It all comes from Walker's Quarry, but it is monitored. There's no pressure treated, nothing with paint or anything in there. In fact, the bulk of what we burn is sawdust pucks. It's very clean. All right, so anyone is welcomed at any point to see what we're burning. We have nothing to hide, so you don't have concerns about anything that's toxic. If it is a little more black, it just means we got to get the flame better, and it's usually due to bad biomass wood. So again, it's just we're not looking anytime soon to move, but it is something we do want to pursue. It is our long-term plan is to move our facility to the Niagara Lake location, and we feel that the land is best suited if we do move to be residential.
Anybody have any questions? Thanks, Brian.
Actually, it's more for the councillors. I'm just wondering in terms of what's the city's overall strategy around this area generally. You know, obviously the Vanderzams, but the MJ property as well. So is there a move to try to move to more residential and attract people from, you know, GTA or whatever, or is it pushing to try to reindustrialize the area?
Bill, you have to come to a microphone. Sorry.
I don't know if I should direct this to David or not. Another tough question. But we're not against residential development. However, we also want to maintain a certain amount of land for industrial use. And over time, that industrial land has been used up for residential areas in some cases. So it's just a case of looking at applications as they come in, and our planning department does that, and applying it to our official plan, and see what happens from there. We're not against development, that's for sure, but on the other hand, we want to make sure we have enough commercial industrial land to suit the present and maybe the future needs of the city. David, is there anything that you want to add to that? Anything that comes to, just before, anything that comes to the Ontario Lands Tribunal, because it's between the city and the Ontario Lands Tribunal, we really are not, as councillors, supposed to speak towards their situation or the situation over here, as was mentioned, because it is a legal thing that's debated. So, David?
Yeah, maybe just to provide a bit of context. So in general, the way the official plan is set out for all of the city, it falls under a regional official plan, which starts to and is intended to sort of put certain areas across the municipalities throughout Niagara, designated land uses. So the official plan amendment 26 was essentially a 4-year process that our planning office did in conjunction with the region, and then it came forward to council. So there's a bit of an allocation in terms of the province sets out targets in terms of population over a 30-year period, as well as employment and jobs per hectare. So all of that goes into a series of studies that then come forward. So the intention is to have a bit of a diversified overall municipality. So in particular in Port Weller East, or Port Weller in general, that all falls within the broader city. So everything's taken into consideration at the same time. So the official plan is intended to do that. So we can't speak specific to these parcels because they have to go in front of council, and there's a variety of things. But the intention is to look at it from a citywide as well as overall Niagara region, because they're the Niagara region official plan defines how many residents that St. Catharines is to have by 2041 as an example, and then the zoning is intended to meet that. So I don't know if that clarifies anything, or maybe it confuses people more than anything. But
Need a minute? Consultation. We all right?
Well, it was just I wanted to make
Jen?
I just wanted to make a clarification. When this came to council and we voted on what would happen and it went into play, it wasn't we voted on this one and we voted on that one. It was the whole package together. All the employment lines were combined in that. It wasn't like we voted on each individual site. So I just wanted to clarify that so people understood that it wasn't like we voted on Lakeshore Road, then we voted on the florist. It was like all together. It was a combination.
Thanks for that, Don, and thank you to Ron Vanderzam and his brothers and cousins. Great to have you come along. Okay, moving along, and we are really getting tight on time. Did you hear that, Linda? Next is Linda, and I want to say this before she comes to the podium. The Port Weller East residential community is bound in full on our easterly and southerly limits by the industrial parks lands. On February 14th, 2022, City Council unanimously approved amendments to the official plan, zoning bylaw, and cannabis production facilities site control bylaw that now allows cannabis producers to set up businesses on those lands with just a 150-meter separation distance from Port Weller homes, Happy Rolf's, local schools, parks, and other sensitive land use areas. Numerous council members spoke of their frustration over the circumstances surrounding the bylaw amendments, saying they had little choice but to pass city staff recommendations. Other communities across Niagara have established greater minimum separation distances, including Niagara Falls, which on January the 18th voted to establish a 500-meter separation. What are our options? That's all. Here's Linda Crouch to speak on the issue. Linda?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Doug, and welcome to everyone here in person and here via Zoom and Facebook. It is an amazing technological world these days, isn't it? I want to say a special thank you from the bottom of my heart from the Vanderzam family for not selling out, for protecting the residents of Port Weller East. Actually, I should say Port Weller East and West. Correct myself. On slide one, okay, you did, okay. Yes, sorry. What here you see on this slide is the bounded by those red dots around that is the line between the urban area and the rural area of our city. So all the blue lands that you see are what's called the general employment lands, which I call a euphemism for industrial, but actually a lot of councillors, when they were discussing the cannabis production facilities bylaw, they were just calling it industrial because that's a main use of them. So, so on February 14th, well, actually, all along, even before February 14th, all the blue lands were able to have cannabis production facilities without any restrictions or anything on them, without any separation distance. So the bylaw on the 14th actually came in and protected us a bit, but when you see across the city, you know, I want everyone to, I don't want to tell you what to think. I just want everybody to think about all these blue lands being eligible to have cannabis production facilities within our urban area. They also are allowed in the agricultural area and also with the same 150-meter separation distance. So let's see, can we have the next slide, please? Okay. That shows Port Weller East and all the blue lands that we have with showing that we're absolutely surrounded by all the industrial lands. And that even includes when you look at like south of, along Lakeshore there, when you cross the bridge and you see even the peach orchards there, those are also the general employment or industrial lands. So, and we also look at there that it is a gateway. When people are coming, when the tourists are coming, driving from Niagara Lake, you know, what do we want them to see here? What do we want have them to have available here for them? Because what, you know, anyhow, I'll give it back to my notes here. So, yeah, the yellow shows the residential area. The green shows our green space, including Happy Rolfs. The large dominating blue lands, as I said, are the general employment lands. The cannabis production facilities can set up anywhere within that 150-meter distance from what's called sensitive land uses, which is what it's called in the city's documents, meaning residential areas, parks, etc. Daycares, as passed 10 days ago. I do want to be clear when I say there's a problem in our planning department. I want to be clear that our counselors cannot direct staff what to do. The only person who can do that is our CIO, who's here. But so when I'm being hard on the planning department here, you'll just know I'm not grinding on them. So we in Port Weller East and West need to step up, watch and respond to what our city's planning department is doing. I've learned that showing up at a council meeting and sending last-minute emails generally do not work, because in a situation like what happened to our city council that they faced on February 14th, the staff recommendation for separation distance was 150 meters. If City Council voted for a greater separation distance that's pulled from the air and not based on science and case law, then it is not legally defensible at the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is a successor to the OMB. And then someone will sue them into expensive litigation if City Council did not pass according to the staff's recommendation. Numerous councillors opposed the 150 meters, but they had to vote in favor of it because as of today, the moratorium stopping cannabis production facilities would have been over. And then it would have turned our city into the Wild West for cannabis production facilities with no separation distances. So, I was going to say no out there. Okay. I believe that an appeal to the bylaw puts it on hold. I'd like either the councillors or the CAO. Like, what happens when an appeal, like if somebody appealed that, well, it would put the whole bylaw on hold?
No, the bylaw is in effect.
Okay, but if somebody appealed it, that doesn't stop?
The appeal will continue, but bylaw...
Or, yeah, I'm sorry, I mean the bylaw.
Yes.
The bylaw would continue?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. I want only the correct information going out to the public. So looking at our Port Weller East issues, I'd like to quote Mayor Sendzik from CHCH-TV just on January 13th of this year at his regular Thursday morning interview about St. Catharines. And so the host, Bob Cowan, asked, so what is the big priority item for 2022? Mayor Sendzik replied, 2022 is going to be housing, Bob. It's a crisis and it's facing so many people in our communities. And so we have to get a handle on it. It's going to be a long-term thing, But we've got our Geneva Street property that we have. We've sold that. It's going to be an affordable housing complex of 250 units. That's just the start of what we have to do with the private sector and with the not-for-profits. Housing is a crisis in many communities, and we have got to address it this year. So, tonight we've heard of residential requests to build homes here in an area that's far more appropriate than for 45 acres of industrial lands, especially with this housing crisis. There are ways for us to work together as a community to make Port Weller East be what it should be and fix what's wrong instead of right now where it looks like it might be headed into the wrong direction. Our industries here, are they flailing or dying in the industrial park? And also, what would happen with them south of Lakeshore Road? Could our city's economic development department move them to a more successful location within the city? Okay, as stated by Mike Pettigrew of 406 Lakeshore, the city has changed our Port Weller East employment lands, locking them into being industrial lands for the long term. But I'm asking everyone to think about how many cannabis production facilities can fit into Port Weller East, north and south of Lakeshore. The Port Weller Residents Association asks you to consider everything that you've heard tonight. You can review it again for clarity or share it with neighbors when it becomes available on YouTube. What are the best options for Port Weller East? What do you truly want to see here? Do you have a vision? We all should strongly consider and likely request a vision plan that carries the weight of the opinions of our residents. Would you like a corner store here, a restaurant, anything else? Because we have nothing like that here. Right now, if we live in Port Weller East, we have the decision. If we want to go to a corner store, are we going to drive 15 minutes each way to Virgil, or are we going to take a chance on the bridge? Because the app admittedly doesn't work on the Seaways website. It literally states that. The radio station can be wrong. The website can be wrong. They can contradict each other. You know, like we are locked into a non-functioning area, but yet that is currently wonderful to live in. I haven't met a person in Port Weller East who doesn't not like living here. We love living here. So I have another specific plan involving our councillors in a positive way that I am working on for extending the cannabis production facility separation distance from our homes. It will follow. Watch your email inboxes. I believe it's feasible, but it will just take work to compile it properly. The employment lands mandate for the amount of lands in our city can be rejigged by the region to exchange housing for us, the workers in our housing, and the relocated industries will thrive elsewhere, near the Queenie or the 406. It is my personal opinion that the city's current plan for Port Weller East will be the ruination of our beautiful residential community, and that breaks my heart, because when I moved into my house, I told my kids I'd lived in 5 houses in the previous 12 years, and I told them that I'm living here till I'm 100. So, can you please, let's see, the next slide. I think it's slide 5, please. Okay, that shows the beautiful aerial view of the canal on one side, like Lake Ontario to the north, the orchards and vineyards to the east, the agricultural lands to the south. And across the canal is the largest residential area in the city that easily 90% of the transport trucks that are coming in and out of the Port Weller industrial parks are driving to and from right down Niagara Street or Ontario Street to the Queenie. They do not take, there's a misconception, especially because I was part of I did a delegation at the Regional Planning and Economic Committee, and they were adamant that our trucks all go down Stewart Road and Reed Road, that they do not drive through the city. Yes, thank you. Because with people who live here know the best, right? Because we know what we see when we pass on the roads. So they are set out truck routes, so they are entitled to drive there. But this is something for everyone to think about. In closing, can we see slide 7, please? Okay. In red are outlined our industrial lands. So when you're looking at that, like okay, I understand when it was set out in 1971, there were different priorities, there were different things. But looking at it now, like from a planning point of view, it doesn't seem to make sense to many people who I've talked to have those outlined red lands all be industrial lands. So, and I'm not forcing my opinion on anybody here. I'm saying everybody's opinion counts on either side. I'm asking that we could work together, think about your vision for Port Weller East, because we can make a difference if enough of us work together. What happens to Port Weller East if we don't? Please watch your email inboxes and make sure you're on our email list. And let's see the residents' vision, not the planning department's vision, that put a cannabis production facility in a location that is surrounded in full by their own defined sensitive land uses. We need to use our voices, work together, because this is an election year. We have excellent city councilors. This plan can include them and anyone else. Together, we can make a difference. And by the way, we residents were here first. The large plan of subdivisions setting out most of Port Weller East's lots and streets, Lakeside, Stepney, Newport, Runcorn, Shoreham, Yonge Street, were all set out in 1913 and exist today. Cottages were converted into homes long ago. The industrial lands were not designated until 1971. So it is the industrial lands that encroach and are interloping into our residential community. We need Port Weller East to somehow become a functional community with a corner store, perhaps a gas station and a restaurant that might come out of a development like 406 or wherever, somewhere not far. And all these things, corner store, gas station and restaurant, you guys tell me, that all used to exist in Port Weller East, right? Doesn't exist now, right? So I'm just asking everyone to please sign up for the Port Weller Residents Association email list and be in the loop for anything that's going to come along.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions of Linda, or should we move along in the interest of time?
One quick comment.
Okay.
Just to reiterate with how much space is allotted for industrial, just on Kiefer Road alone, since I was young, I know for sure there were 2 or 3 lots that have been empty for as long as I can remember. We have not attracted anyone new to that area forever. And now to make more land, into industrial just seems, it's just not right. Like we would have filled those lots years ago. They have been empty as long as I can remember them.
We've all passed through that land a lot. I don't think the people that instituted that park, that industrial park, are around today. It would be interesting to see their reactions to how their vision has kind of fallen flat. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's to the councillors. What can you do to change your decision on the zoning of 150 meters away from cannabis production with respect to residential? I've been not as long as the Vanderzalms, but I've raised my family here. We've been here for 21 years, and that's why I'm here. I don't want cannabis production close to my house. And I guess one more thing, was that assessment of your decision accurate?
For the cannabis?
As to how that got passed?
Dave can come up. Can you come up? Okay. Okay, so I just want, for clarification for myself, we did try to get, okay, for the council meeting, we did try to have the separation greater, and we went from 600. I suggested that wasn't going. I suggested 200 to 250. That wasn't going. So we were left with the 150. And if we didn't pass the bylaw that night, as Linda indicated, it would have ceased to exist, and anybody could have then come in and open a cannabis thing next door to the people that live along in those townhouses. Well, now what's happened, because we do have the 150, it's not the greatest, but it does eliminate the fact that they can't put a cannabis in north of Lakeshore, right, Dave? So by doing that, by putting in the 150, it doesn't sound like very much, but it does prevent cannabis from going into our residential areas anywhere north of Lakeshore Road.
How come Niagara Falls could have 500 then? Can you go to the microphone, please?
Yeah, one at a time, please.
How come Niagara Falls can't, or can have that difference?
So it's the 150 meters was based on a consultant that did the analysis and looked at the city and provided that recommendation. There was public commentary on that during the process. I think there was a public meeting in December, I believe, on the cannabis. The one thing I'll point out, that the distance could change. That's a council decision, but it was based on a consultant recommendation. So I can't direct, me as a CAO, I can't direct a consultant what to say. I can't direct our professional planners what to say. What I can do is, and they're the professionals, and they bring forward reports for consideration of council. In terms of the 150-meter distance, and you know, what separates one community looking at 150 versus another community doing 500, 600, 400, 300, whatever, that's ultimately up to the study that they put forward. St. Catharines is a little different because we have such a compared to other municipalities, we're much more densely populated and spread out municipality. So the 150 meters actually achieves a very similar, because it's 150 meters with any sensitive use, which is a school, which is a residential building, which is a park, and there's all of these sensitive uses that get put in place. So when you start to interlayer that, it really limits where the location can be. And when the consultants do that reporting, they look at different things, wind patterns, odor, because in reality, the biggest concern and issue is the odor that the facilities produce. And they're working towards that. This is a very new industry, and they're trying to work through that process. The 150 meters was based on all of that review. The notion that if council wanted to change it, the prerogative was for if council chose to do so, you have to balance with a potential appeal, and then what happens if we can't back up that 200, 600, 500 meters. So it was really based on that review that the consultants put forward, and also looking at the whole city in general and trying to manage all of the density of the population throughout St. Catharines, and applying that across all of it. And 150 seemed to make the most sense in the consultant's mind, based on all of these elements and the community feedback.
One more. Is your question to?
Yes.
CEO?
I have a question. That you had a moratorium for 2 years for the study of this cannabis production. For this cannabis production that came into our neighborhood, the fire department had to come in and do a fire plan for an industrial building and inspect it and okay it. So why are you okaying an illegal operation in your city when there's a moratorium in place?
So can you explain the location specifically? I'm just trying to.
5 Sea Park.
On Sea Park. So the moratorium was based on and I don't want to get specific, but it was basically on the agricultural areas. The use is allowable, and we have to, some of these production facilities are they're all federally regulated, and some are for medicinal, which is a federal process that happens. If they're allowable and they're within buildings, then it's through the building code that they would go through.
Well,
And that's where the fire would do the inspection, no different than any
Every
business.
industrial building in St. Catharines has to have a fire plan for their fire department to open up. So why are you approving an illegal operation to open up in your city?
Well, it wouldn't be an illegal operation.
It was, you're a moratorium. No cannabis production for 2 years until the
On
study was
production
done.
or cultivation,
Yeah,
so.
and they were cultivating production.
Yeah, I can't, I'd have to look into it a bit more to give you some more. I'm happy to do so.
Okay.
I just don't have it in front of me. I apologize.
Well, we've run the clock out. David, she would like to clarify something. Is that okay? Linda, use that microphone, Linda. Is that okay?
I just wanted to say for clarification, residents understand that it was the planning department that had 2 years to have the consultant study done and presented to councillors. And they presented it at the very last meeting, 10 days before the moratorium expired. The planning department put them in a very difficult position, and they made the best decision that they could at the time. We can try and see what we can do by working together to see what we can do to change it. I don't know how. I have an idea of how we can do that. Like I said, it takes work to put together, and it takes support from the residents. And I just wanted to explain that. And the cannabis, the moratorium was only on agricultural lands, not on industrial lands. Just due to a Planning Act issue. It wasn't anything to do with our planning department or councillors that had that.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Okay, that comes to the end of our agenda. I want to wrap it up by saying a couple of things generally. This is the kind of meeting I hope you agree, both you physically here in the hall and those joining us on social media, is very useful in terms of, as I think I suggested at the beginning of this whole thing, is very useful in terms of getting people collectively to think about what's going on, what we'd prefer to be going on, and to come together and send the appropriate messages to those people making decisions. So generally speaking, it's been really great to connect again. It's been a long time since we've been able to do this, 2 years. 2 years ago, in fact, we hosted an event at the Port Weller picnic at Club LaSalle. With mandates easing, we hope to get back on track enjoying the things that make Port Weller East and Port Weller West such enjoyable neighborhoods to live in. As we've seen tonight, that requires vigilance to step up and share your voice when things are happening that could negatively affect your quality of life. Port Weller East has unique challenges, including city aspirations for an expanding industrial area that we think is incompatible with the growing residential community in the area. Port Weller Residents Association believe that a vision plan is necessary to truly and transparently deal with the conflicting land uses in Port Weller East particularly. And we encourage all of you to support that initiative. We believe there are too many competing objectives in the area. Local residents deserve more from the city, and only through a proper vision plan can residents rest easy. We think we need a pause on any changes from the status quo until a vision plan can be created. Is that too much to ask? We hope that you noticed when you came in, particularly those of you who are not now receiving it, samples of the Port Weller foghorn, our news bulletin that is completely free and sent to your inbox by email 7 or 8 times a year whenever our esteemed editor can get around to filling out the pages. And you really should take advantage of it. It's a great little tabloid paper. Follow our Facebook page and of course our website, which by the way recently has an addition to it, some really attractive, well-priced, high-quality merchandise, sweatshirts, T-shirts, bags, and so on, that identify you as a Port Weller resident, as a lover of Sunset Beach or Jones Beach. So on behalf of the Port Weller Residents Association, I want to thank you all who came, Don, Bill, David, Trish, Jenny, Mike, and the Vanderzams. Thanks to all of you in the room and to everyone at home. We appreciate your time tonight. I have one little piece of business, if I may. Many of you filled out a ballot for a very nice prize and an indication of thank you, again, all for coming. A gift certificate from Valley Restaurant, and I've been told, I just about lost it, that the winner of this lovely prize is Rob Vanderzam. How's that for neighborliness? Thank you all again. Enjoy. Sorry, we have one. Sorry, can you just hang on for just a second? Don would like to say something.
I'd just like to take one more moment of your time on behalf of Jenny, Bill, myself, Dave, and Trish. Thank you to the group that got us together here this evening. It's been certainly a pleasure for us, and I hope we've answered some of your questions. We'd be willing to, still chat with you and whatever, but truly it was our pleasure to be here this evening, and thank you very much, and we'd be more than willing to do this again at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.